SaaSy Sales podcast, we meet Evan Carlton at Matillion. Evan's a really interesting guy. He started out there as an SDR, then built the SDR team, and now is in sales enablement. Some really tactical advice I got from Evan about how to be a fantastic sales leader, and also the transition from SDR management into enablement. There are a lot of commonalities, a lot of crossover, and we talk some specifics that you can take away and put into practice tomorrow. Let's get into it. All right, Evan Carlton, hey, it's great to catch up. I think it might be, would it be 2 years since we've seen each other in person, something like that?
Sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, well, this is a treat. So you're calling in all the way from the Denver area. Where specifically? Which town are you in?
I'm in a little town called Evergreen up here in the hills, kind of at the base of the Rocky Mountains. So very, very pretty. And nice to be able to get outside, not living in a city. I can still go for walks, which is very nice.
That's a luxury. I'm really glad for that. That's fantastic. I'm here in Las Vegas in the desert, so it's a little bit of a different story. This morning when I went for a jog in the middle of nowhere, all I got to see was jackrabbits and dust and rocks. That's what I get to see. I'm excited to chat today because since we met, you've had some really amazing progress. So how will we get kick-started and talk about where you are today, your company, what they do, and your role? Because when you and I first met, you were moving into SDR management, as I recall.
Correct. Yeah, so for a little background, exactly that, I had been brought into Matillion about 2 years ago now, just kind of at a high level, what Matillion does, right? So Matillion, we always like to think of ourselves that we exist because we have a few fundamental truths we believe, those being that every business needs to compete using data. Given volume and data complexity these days, the scale needed to handle it, the only place that's logical to put that is going to be in the cloud, and the only place that's cost effective is going to be in the cloud. And then last, you got to have three really key elements to take full advantage of data in the cloud. You got to have all your data accessible there, a smooth and efficient cloud data warehouse operation, and a way to bring that data into the data warehouse and transform it so it's ready for analytics. So we provide a complete data integration and transformation solution. It's purpose-built for cloud data warehouses. Our push-down ELT architecture is revolutionizing the ETL space currently, and are very fortunate to represent a product that has fantastic product market fit. So yeah, I was brought on to Matillion about 2 years ago to launch and scale their global SDR program, which had never been attempted at Matillion. We had a lot of success there. I came in and was responsible for directly recruiting, hiring, training, ramping, coaching all SDRs. I built everything from scratch based on experience from my time as an SDR at NetApp. I developed our SDR bootcamp, playbook, call scripts, email templates, objection handling. I helped write the comp plans with our CFO and VP of sales. So just kind of end to end built the program.
Let me pause you for a second. Hang on, just for the listeners here. So I've got a bunch of folks here at SDR managers or coming up that track, and they're listening to what you're saying now. Listening to everything you did, you weren't hired to be sales enablement or operations, right? You were there to build an SDR team. What I'm hearing you say is because you're the first man on the ground, you pretty much had to self-enable and build the systems, processes, collateral enablement assets because there was no one else to do it. Is that right?
Exactly
Okay.
that, yeah. And I joined the business at kind of an inflection point when we were really maturing and growing, and we were going to a new phase of our business. And so there was lots of collateral and content that was really helpful for me and to build the program. But I had to do a lot of work too to kind of up-level that, to SDRify it in a way, and to just build the program around the materials we already had built. So after finishing 110% to quota in 2018 and then 122% in 2019, scaling the SDR organization from just myself to 14 SDRs across three teams in the US and UK. And then also one thing I have to admit, a bit proud of, maintaining a 100%, unheard of 100% retention rate in our SDR organization. Never let somebody go, never fired somebody, only ever promoted people.
You're basically saying is that you created a prison organization. Is that what I'm hearing you saying?
People don't want to leave. People don't want to leave. We've got really high hiring standards, and I don't hire mediocre folks. I don't believe in bodies and chairs operations. I'll hire really talented people, pay them very well, and invest heavily in their success. You do that, and the rest will follow. I could go hire 3 mediocre reps and pay them poorly, or I can hire 1 really good rep and pay them well. I'm much more a fan of that model. So after doing all that, our VP of sales, Christian Everard, approached me and shared, hey, look, we want to launch this inside sales program in 2020. I don't want you, I love having you on the team, but I feel like your value would be greater supporting inside sales and sales development. You can't do that managing all these SDRs directly. How about we move you into the sales enablement manager role where you're supporting inside sales and sales development with no direct reports? So I've got more time for coaching, for content, for ongoing training and mentorship. And then I also do a lot of content creation for the AE organization. So I indirectly support the enterprise side of the business as well.
So for context, how large is the sales organization? How many individuals roughly are there?
Oh man, we've been growing so fast up until recently with current events. I want to say around 40 or 50, if you're including reps, sales operations, management, all the other auxiliary roles, about 40 to 50.
So you're an army of one then, right? You are sales enablement from Matillion, yeah?
Correct. There is Kelly Hallett, who's a product marketing manager specific to sales enablement, but she's more product materials and tech competitive, where I'm more like sales best practices, training, process.
Let's talk about that, because that's an interesting relationship. Because in the past, before the title existed, oftentimes it was product marketing that essentially were enablement. Now, enablement, as we've learned, is a much broader thing than just battle cards, competitive analysis, and messaging, right? But can you share with folks who are thinking about getting into the enablement role, what's your relationship like with that product marketing function, and what's your role in terms of translating what comes out of there into the sales org, or does it come through unfiltered? How do you work with that function?
Yeah, so great question. Kelly and I work together on a fairly frequent basis. I've given her some of my kind of thoughts on distilling information, because there's some things that are highly relevant to the sales org, other thing that might be a little bit too much, or depending on the role, right? The amount of information that you might arm an AE with versus a new SDR could be very different, and I don't want to overwhelm that new SDR. So she very much does her own thing. She helps to write sales decks for us, battle cards, product brochures, those sorts of things. But she works very closely with me to keep me abreast of those changes and updates, so that I can then understand that and then further coach and enable the team and the reps.
Got it. And I really like your background for enablement, right? Because not only you've been an individual contributor, but you've scaled a team and you've managed a team. So you speak the language of sales, the pressures they're facing, and then perhaps the disconnect that sometimes there exists between a product marketing organization and the reality on the street. So that's super helpful. One thing I'm really always interested to ask enablement professionals about is, talk to me about the definition or the line of responsibility between you and, say, an SDR manager or an inside sales manager. And let's think about things like your role in terms of coaching, like who's listening to calls, providing feedback, doing role plays. Can you just help people understand how you see it?
Yeah, great question. So we have a director of inside sales and sales development, Joe Yazunis, my boss. All the SDRs in North America report directly to him. In the UK, we have Ben Redfern, who's joined us recently. He's an inside sales manager. All inside sales and SDRs roll up to him. Again, freeing me up so I can be more available for ad hoc coaching, for content creation, for process establishment, those sorts of things. I actually own recurring invites with the SDRs in the Americas for their one-on-ones each week. Joe, the director, joins those every other week. Ben in the UK, he owns everything in the UK there just for timing purposes. I was having a lot of very early calls for quite a while there. So that's helpful. But yeah, I join whenever needed. If there's ever a time in one of those one-on-ones in the UK where I'm needed for any reason, I can always hop on. I block and dedicate time every week just to having one-on-one coaching with reps. So every week I'm going to dedicate at least a few hours to, I'll go through attainment from last month and find the bottom performers and reach out to them and block time to work with them, whether that's objection handling, call coaching, outbound account building and prospecting process, any of those types of things to help make sure they have a better result that current month. But it's very much a divide and conquer approach. I regularly meet with the managers, Joe and Ben, and the other sales directors for the AEs to understand what's working, what isn't. Do I have any thoughts I can share? Can I go do anything from a content or training or workshop perspective to support you guys? So that's kind of how we divide it here. Does that answer your question?
It does. Let me ask you this. How do you know specifically for an individual rep who's underperforming, what to be coaching them on? Because I should imagine there's a collaboration between you, sales ops and reporting, and the direct manager. And always you're loving this question, aren't you?
Love this question. Yeah. So Matt, one of my favorite things, one of the things that I think made me really successful as an SDR at NetApp. I just talked about this on a podcast earlier this week with Matteo.
Wait, what? You mean I'm not your only podcast host? Have you been cheating on me?
I got a couple more in the pipe. Yeah, no. Well, these days, a little bit more time on my hands. Yeah, I'm able to do a little bit more content, which is fun. No, something that I did as an SDR that I found to be very effective. KPIs are just that. They're minimums set by your boss. Top performers should be setting their own KPIs. It's just that. That's the minimum expectation. So what I did as an SDR, I attached myself at the hip to top performers on the team when I joined. Figure out what are they doing that works. From there, I build my process around that. I hold my calling hours, my admin time, my one-on-ones with my reps. That's sacred. If my boss is like, hey, do you have 5 minutes? I'd say, no, I'm calling right now. I'm free after 4:30. You're welcome to reach out then. And I had no problem doing that. From there, as months went by, I got enough data on my conversion metrics to know, how many dials on average does it take me to set a meeting? How many meetings set show up? How many meetings that hold result in an OI? How many OIs result in an actual op being created? What's the propensity of that opportunity to close one, right? So I built out my whole full funnel dash of metrics for myself and eventually figured out what my conversion metrics were. So then I said, okay, if my goal is X number for the year, I had an annual goal as an SDR, I 300% that. I said, I want to shoot for 3X. I always tell our reps, shooting for quota is a great way to miss your quota. Because when something inevitably drops, you're going to end at 80, 90, versus someone who shot for 300 and they miss and they landed 150, right? So I shot for 300, but I wasn't just, pissing in the wind or just, throwing stuff in the air and seeing what sticks. I understood my conversion metrics. So I know if I make this many dials a day, I'm going to set this many meetings a day, this many a week, this many will hold, this many OIs. So I call it reverse engineering activity. You reverse engineer your activity to define your own KPIs. You hold yourself to that by blocking your time, making sure you adhere to that. And then you're able to have these really high levels of output because I'm not shooting to make my daily call volume minimum. I'm not shooting to hit quota. I'm making the number of dials and holding and setting enough meetings to do 300% of quota. And I'm doing that every day on a concerted basis. I hit my number for the year in the first week of Q3 as an SDR with an annual goal. I'm sure you can imagine there were some really generous multipliers the back half of that year. And as a result, cleaned up really well. So that's one of the biggest things that I use to coach our reps. I break down the funnel because if someone says, well, I'm just not having success. Well, that could mean a million things, right? Are you not getting connects? Are you not putting in activity? Is it objection handling? And I don't want to reinvent the wheel. Maybe they're doing 90% of what they're doing is right. So I want to hone in and figure out specifically where in the process are we falling off. And then once you identify that, there's only so many variables that could be influencing that step, right? But I feel like this is right in your wheelhouse, Matt, because I know you've got a big background in like sales ops and like breaking down the pipeline to a more macro level. I think that I think that that's been really helpful to diagnose issues in the team and then coach based on that.
Well, that's great insight. Let me ask you this. Well, I'll make an observation. The best SDR who became the best inside sales rep that I'd ever had in my team was a guy called Aaron Zukowski, who's now a director of sales development. And Aaron, they used to call him Mr. 10X, because if the target was 10 meetings, he wanted 100 meetings, But the actual metric I'm talking about that he would refer to is activities. And he would not let himself go home until he'd done 100 activities a day.
I need to meet this guy, Aaron, because I did the same thing, Matt, but a little different. So my rule, those conversion metrics I mentioned, it splashed out to basically I had to set 2 meetings a day and hold 2 meetings a day if I wanted to do 300% to plan. So I didn't let myself go to lunch each day until I set a meeting that morning. And I didn't let myself go home that night until I set a meeting. And so I had some nights that I'd be at the office. I covered California. I was in Boulder, so an hour ahead of Pacific. I'd still be smashing the phones at 7:30, 8 p.m. some nights. My stomach's growling. I really want to go home and have dinner. But I love that mentality.
So this is a common theme. You know, I meet a lot of people, and it's that sort of that stubbornness that I see in people that are really successful. They won't let themselves fail. They've set a number, and it's a bit like, you know, you're going to the gym and you say to yourself, I'm going to run for 45 minutes at 10 mile an hour. Then halfway through, you're like, you know what? I'm kind of feeling tired, and I don't want to exhaust myself. Maybe I'll get sick, so I'll just back it down to 8. No. Nope. People like yourself, like Aaron, they hold themselves accountable. And for those folks listening, I think that's critical. And I love your point. KPIs are bare minimums. It's like the commit in a forecast. Like that's a worst case scenario, right? And we need to go beyond that. Yes. Let me also ask you, so listen to what you're saying here. Given that the direct manager, the frontline manager has a role to play in this, how do you balance that out? What are they doing and what are you doing with respect to coaching?
Great question. So again, it's a little different based on the team. Ben in the UK for us, he's having all those one-on-ones. I have a weekly objection handling workshop with each team. So I'll do bright and early Thursday morning with the UK team. We also have SDR team meetings, of course, and then we have daily stand-ups with the team. So I'm pretty locked in with the reps themselves and with the managers to understand, because of course, you know, it might be lost in translation or whatever. So I've kind of got both perspectives. I can hear from management, their perspective. I can hear from the rep and the front line, what they feel is going on. From there, we're just in constant communication. Having good communication is obviously key given current events. So we're just all over Slack, email, phone call, whatever it is, just to be locked in with each other. Mm-hmm. And that's like on a daily basis. So we know exactly what's going on where, who's struggling, who's having success, why they're having success. And then we just we agree upon, hey, this sounds like something you might actually be better at, or, hey, you know what, actually, I think this is something I should take. I feel like I've got the right experience for this. So.
Got it. So let me ask you this. You've been in the role not that long, and I'm always interested to understand, what are the most challenging aspects of the enablement role for you?
To be honest, it's around the army of one part, which is just there's so much to do and so little time. So it really just comes down to finding time to get large projects and tasks done. I mentioned I do a lot of content creation, best practice establishment. My boss jokes that I'm 1/3 learning and development, 1/3 sales operations, and 1/3 management. I think it's really more like 50% learning and development, 50% ops, and 50% management.
Hey, let's talk about that for a second, actually. I know that you're a member of the Revenue Collective. You're a member of the Sales Enablement Society, which are well-known groups. What value, what support, what learning do you get out of those two groups? Because I'm sure they're different, just so other folks considering what they need to do.
Totally, yeah. Great shout. So I love being a part of the Revenue Collective, Sales Enablement Society. I've joined recently, and I'm really enjoying so far. In addition to those groups, I'm also part of the American Association of Inside Sales Professionals, Bravado, which is a new organization out of the Bay Area, if I remember right. Modern Sales Pros. I'm part of all the ones going on out there. And the idea is just, I'm really big on the concept of lifelong learning and learning a living. My buddy Niall James, a good buddy of mine now at AE at Box in San Francisco, he helped me when I joined NetApp, and he shared the phrase "learning a living" with me. That's really stuck with me. So you're never going to know everything. You're never going to be, you kind of never reach your peak, right? At Matillion, we believe that no person, product, or process is ever complete. And so I'm always trying to build on my own knowledge and experience so that I can better enable and support our teams. So I'm always attending webinars, workshops, listening to podcasts, reading books, just involved in the Slack channels and the group communication forums. I want to hear what other leaders are doing, kind of validate what I'm doing or come up with new ideas and ways of approaching something. And I also have regular meetings and calls with other sales leaders, other people that are launching an SDR team for the first time, or other sales enablement folks. Again, for the same reason, to share ideas, to hear what they're doing that's working and what's not. And that's especially important given current events, because the way of doing things isn't your typical value prop and typical process probably aren't working right now. We have to pivot to current events, and we're all figuring out how to do that with each day that goes by.
Evan, how's that changed your job? So now that you're all remote, how do you enable, I'd love just a brief synopsis of what's different for you as you try and enable your team from the home office.
Yeah, To be honest, it hasn't been too significant of a difference. Obviously, having all our meetings remote versus in person. The biggest difference I've found is that I'm not able to just have floor time. I like to have just dedicated floor time where I'm just in the bullpen with the inside sales team, with the SDRs, not doing anything. I'm not even working on an outreach sequence. I'm just there to be present, pop in, just shadow people, watch their process, listen to them on the phone, and be there to provide ad hoc coaching, objection handling, or process observation. Hey, you should try doing this. Have you thought of this, etc. So I'm not able to do that. And so as an alternative, I'm blocking that coaching time with reps of a few hours a week. And I pick the people that are struggling. And then we find, using those metrics I mentioned, figure out what part of the process they're struggling with. And then that's going to be our topic for the week. And then in our one-on-ones, we revisit those metrics to see if we're watching a change occur and positive improvement. To be honest, Matt, I've actually found I'm able to make more progress on those large projects I mentioned that are so hard to make progress on because of all the ad hoc questions that come up in the office and all the distractions of the office. So I'm actually making some great progress. We've formed a new outreach content committee with a few members of the team on a weekly basis, adding lots of new content and sequences, working very closely with marketing and demand gen to pivot our go-to-market as we shift to this new normal of working from home and all digital events. So I actually feel like we're adapting quite well.
I thought you might say that because it's the enablement folks that are constantly getting tapped on the shoulder, right? Now you've got some good focused time to get some stuff done, right?
Yeah.
So I have a question. In terms of results, I mentioned before our call that I wanted to understand a little bit about how you measure success, your key result areas. So at the end of the year, when you're sitting down with your boss, what are the metrics or areas that you need to have delivered on to show that you're doing a great job?
Yeah, great question, because enablement is, in some ways, I don't want to use the word convoluted, but it's not as straightforward as like being a trainer, right? And it's not as straightforward as being a manager, right?
Yeah.
So somewhere in the middle. Half of my comp, my bonus, is based on the team's performance. So of course, if I'm here to support these individuals and enable their success, my mission is very clear to me. I'm here to empower our sales professionals to perform at the top of their game, to help them to provide maximum value to our customers, and to help them to consistently crush quota and progress in their careers. Crystal clear for me, at least. And so in line with that, of course, their performance is a direct indicator of my efficacy as an enablement manager. Of course, there's only so much influence I can have on that, but nonetheless, that's of course a first indicator of my success. The other thing is that I also in QBRs am assigned these large projects, tasks to work on during that quarter. And so completion or attainment of those projects, of those goals, is another measurement of my success in the role.
Got it. You know what? My little trick for you is get as many MBOs, management by objectives, as you can, because in my experience, you always attain them. It's easy money. I'm just kidding. Team performance is great. So look, in the last minute or so we have, I'd love for you to share any philosophies that you'd have or work practices that you'd like everyone to know about. You've already talked about being the 3X man, which I love, going over the top. Are there any other personal philosophies you have you sort of live by other than, learning to live, which I'm going to steal because I think it's a wonderful phrase?
Yeah, learning to live and shout out to Niall James on that one. I think that, that's a great question. I think that the biggest thing right now, especially given current events, I saw something from Kevin Dorsey, if you know him on LinkedIn. He made a great post recently talking about rising right now. Like, people are either running around with their hair on fire and freaking out and trying to figure out how to respond, or they're digging their heels in and getting even more stubborn and just cranking up the activity, but they're not pivoting their messaging or go to market, or people are adapting. And I feel like SDRs and salespeople in general are well positioned here because we're very persistent, stubborn, and adaptable by the nature of the profession. So a big thing I would just offer right now to anyone listening is, like, stay positive. Use this time, even if you're struggling in your role from an attainment perspective, to learn something new, up-level your game, go get a new certification, go learn more about your competitors. If you're struggling to set meetings right now with prospects and, they're saying, oh, COVID, everything's on hold, call me back in a few months. get with one of your prospects that you have a good relationship with or a customer, offer to buy them lunch, a virtual lunch, give them a DoorDash or a Grubhub gift card, and just pick their brain to understand, hey, of course, this is someone who fits your ICP, as a blah, blah, blah at ABC Co., what's top of mind for you right now, given current events? Try to open the kimono and understand what your ICP, what your buyers are actually thinking about right now. So then you can go pivot your messaging, form a content committee perhaps at your company, if you don't have an enablement person like me, to then update your messaging so that you're staying relevant with your prospects. Because your typical value prop, if I hit up someone and say, hey, I want to talk to you about optimizing ETL at ABC Co., well, maybe that's not top of mind for ABC Co. right now because they've got bigger fish to fry. So just a few thoughts I'd share. That, and just foster a culture of positivity on your team. We've got enough negativity right now in the world. So we've made a concerted effort as a team to give more positive shout outs to team members in a public forum. So, I get off a demo as an SDR and post in the general Slack, hey, shout out Matt Cameron, just delivered an amazing demo to ABC Co. Or, hey, shout out to our SA who went above and beyond in their support for this customer. And that just helps everybody to have a little bit more communication and positivity in this tough time.
Evan, I love it. Thank you for being so generous today. We jam-packed our 25 minutes with takeaways and tips. I really appreciate it. And I know a lot of people are going to get some value from this. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.